And we're live. Hi, welcome to the Talking Grid. And we are so excited because we have a big fan club here at Loveland for Carto. So we have Carto in the house today. So super excited. This is a great Friday. We have with us Javier, the head of data from Carto. Hi, Javier. It's so good to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, hello everybody, and thanks for joining this session with the Language team. It's a pleasure for me to be supporting this, and I hope you find it interesting and fun too.
Absolutely, we'll make it fun. We have some attendees here too. So hi there, please type in your questions. We will answer them along the way, but we'll definitely set some time aside at the end to answer them as well. And also joining us today is our amazing CEO, Jerry Paffendorf. Hi, Jerry, how are you?
I try. Hey, everybody. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, for sure. And this is me again, Sahana. So let's get started. Today, we're going to talk about Carto and data, because Javier, that's what you do. You work with data. You select and curate the different types of data that will work well with Carto. So that's kind of what we are going to talk about. We'll also talk about COVID and how location intelligence suddenly became the most relevant thing since COVID hit. And then, of course, we always end our conversations with a few fun things and some fun banter. So that's also in store for today. So Javier, tell us a little bit more about Carto. Carto has had such an interesting journey, from an open source space. So can you talk to us a little bit more about Carto in general?
Yeah, still open source as well. So yeah, I'm gonna for those that maybe are not very familiar with what we do, I'm gonna explain a little bit the story of the company, and then I will focus on my role and what I do at Carto. So really, the project started with our two co-founders in Spain in 2008, and it was not called Carto; it was called Visuality, and it was a small, let's say, data visualization consulting boutique, very focused on environmental projects, environmental data. And then with the time, it was already 4 years later in 2012 when they realized that with all those projects, they had built technology. And that and out of that realization is how CartoDB was born. Also here, very focused on being a geospatial database in the cloud. And then, well, you may have seen all the evolutions that the company and the technology has done. So at the end of 2015, when the Series B was closed, there was a big rebranding from CartoDB to Carto, and focused more on solutions and bringing access to geospatial to not only GIS experts but also business analysts and data scientists. And was also a very important transition for the company as we moved headquarters to New York. That's where we are right now. Yeah. So right now we are at I think it's already 120 members of the team, and the office in Madrid, the office in New York, and also an office in Seville.
Right. Nice.
So I'm running the data team. So you would say obviously a data analytics platform doesn't work without data, and data has been present always in the story of Carto. But my role and the role of the team especially have to do with building all these relationships that we have right now with data providers across multiple categories, and managing all that. That at the end you see it as a piece of our technology, that is the data observatory. That is our data exchange, from where we offer all this catalog of third-party and public and open data sets for our users. Yeah. And then another part of our team is it takes care of all the data science projects. So when we take data from all those multiple sources, data also from the customers, and we help them with services to build a revenue prediction model or a churn model.
Wow,
I love that story about just going from a passion project to then building a real big business behind it. And we share and empathize with that too. That's been part of our journey. And that makes it so much fun to now be at this point when we can provide data to you and to your customers when it's useful to them. So I just love hearing that. That's the fun part of business, is that voyage, I guess, right? From like passion to making it significant, and then seeing what you're interested in, help lots of people get stuff done. So that's so cool.
Yeah, it is. And Carto is still very big in all of Europe, right? It's because it started out of Spain, so it is considered one of our, one of the biggest mapping companies back in Europe, and now headquartered in US as well. So talking about the data types that you work with, Javier, so it's mainly location data, right?
It is always location data. So it's at the end data that can be represented in some sort of geography. It could be a point, a line, a polygon, but always with the location component. Yes.
Yeah. So speaking of data, I think data. We've seen a bunch of data trends growing in the past few years, but I think some of it suddenly got impacted with COVID, and people suddenly realized that location data is even more relevant when COVID hit, because we can talk about mobility data if you want, or we can talk about just foot traffic and POI data, and how that suddenly came under a spotlight because people realized that as soon as COVID hit, those were the kind of data that people were scrambling for to make sense of what needs to happen, to come up with immediate solutions for the government agencies, for the medical staff, and for just generally to install any sort of policy in place. Because ever since the lockdown hit, I think, a lot of the companies, and I've seen a lot of wonderful visualizations by Carto itself about foot traffic data and how that impacted, given that the time spent at home was supposed to go up. So I saw that you've been measuring, foot traffic data at stores and pharmacies and public transit and parks and things like that. So did it come as a sudden surprise, and that you had to quickly adapt and come up with quick solutions, quick visualizations that could help people understand the problem at large?
So many things. So I mean, yes, it's a bit, in a way, it's weird, but it's an exciting time to be working with in the location intelligence sector, because we've seen the relevance of understanding patterns across, especially in the understanding the outbreak of the virus, the impact, how the social distancing policies were being followed, and if they were being effective in the different parts of the territory, depending also of the level of gravity of the spread of the virus. So we've done a lot of work. It's not that it took us by surprise that the types of data that have become more important these days, because we were already working extensively with human mobility data. So you check our data catalog, you will see that we work with 10 different data categories, from basic demographics, point of interest, human mobility, to of course parcel data from you guys. Right. So we were very connected with those providers, and so what was happening, and how also they positioned themselves, giving access to the data to researchers and NGOs, trying to understand the impact of this of the pandemic. So we have been working a lot. We also were giving our technology as a form of a grant to researchers and NGOs working on this, and so we've done a lot of things with human mobility data. So helping several administrations to understand the use of parks in different phases of the lockdown. So which areas of the parks and which parks and what time of the day those were used more, and if they had to do some sort of policy or measure to prevent that to affect negatively the spread of the virus. We also did an interesting project trying to find out the potential risk in areas to become a food desert, or an area where there's a lack of essential service, so pharmacies, groceries, and so on. And another interesting study was also to try to infer the risk of saturation of people in the public transport system going back and forth from hospitals. So to where there was a risk of patients and health personnel to collide in the same place with not being able to save distance. So we've done a lot of that too.
Wow. Yeah.
It's one of those moments where location information goes from being nice to have to just necessary to have. Do you know what I mean? That's the feeling. Because how often do we have a creeping death or a plague spread across the face of the earth where somebody has to sit down and think like, hey, do we want to study that? I think it could be useful. It's like, no, we need to know that stuff now. It's like an emergency kind of a situation. So we definitely feel that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think we have seen the other sides on that. I think human mobility data, or trying to understand patterns from aggregated data captured by mobile phones. I think we've seen a lot of debate. I mean, I think there's an active and open and healthy debate to be had. But I think before the focus was always on more like on a negative context. And I think here we're starting to see that maybe if we do this right, there's actually a beneficial use case and a beneficial beneficial capacity of this data that we can put to use.
Yeah, I was reading up a little bit on the history of location intelligence, and it looks like, every time there is an outbreak or a pandemic, like you said, Jerry, it's a necessary to have. So the first instance of location intelligence that anyone can recollect from history is in 1954, or when the cholera outbreak in London, and that's when it did. Yeah, and that's how location intelligence came into place, was because of an outbreak. So it's no surprise that during COVID, everyone is scrambling and looking for any sort of location data to make sense of it and build policies and solutions from it.
Actually, it's funny. I mean, it's interesting that you say that, because we use this story many times to explain Carto and what we do. Maybe now we will be able to turn it more up to date and talk about this outbreak, the COVID.
Right.
Yeah, and what are the new insights, right? Because there was the book on that story too, right? I think it was called The Ghost Map by Stephen Johnson. Wrote a book about that, just plotting those points where people were getting sick. Because I forget what year that was. I think it might have been earlier. Because I think people were like uncertain about germs at the time too, right? Which is funny to like think about. Like they trace things back to people getting sick at this one common well, and it was like, okay, this is like there's a problem here, something physically to do with the well. And as innovation happens and time moves on, we're going to find similar insights from this encounter, but they're going to be even broader and richer because of the work that you're able to do, right? Yeah. How it affects different demographics and people in different densities of neighborhoods and different kinds of income, and people who aren't able to stay at home all day working on the internet, as I think that we're fortunate to be able to do, but have to go out into harm's way and just understand so much more about how we can make life better for people. So I love that. Thanks for bringing that analogy up, Sahana. That's cool. And it's cool that you guys look at that. That's good history.
Yeah, I was just like, it's every time something like this comes together, we realize how important location data is. Until then, and again, I don't want to bring this up to stir any sort of controversy, but there's always a little bit of controversy, and there's always a debate when it comes to any sort of location data. There's one half that thinks that it's not safe, and there's the other half that thinks that it's important. So, but it's always been relevant, in history and in helping solve problems. So I think, at least in today's time, this is the most relevant data there is. I think there's a question. Are you seeing COVID-19 work driving insights that rely on unusual or new data sets that you hadn't worked with before? Interesting question.
I mean, we haven't worked a lot with health data before, so all trying to correlate mobility with daily increase of cases and metrics like that. This, unfortunately, was new for us. Another new data source. I mean, we closed a new partnership recently during this period with a company that analyzes sentiment out of social media posts, and this was something that we have started working, trying to study, the variations of that sentiments of posts related somehow to COVID-19 with everything else, with the mobility, with the number of cases, with the drop in consumption. So this is also something new that we done during this period.
The sentiment analysis, is that from Spatial AI? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You know them?
Yes. Yeah. Aware of them. Yes. Big fans of their work as well. I had worked briefly in AI where we tried to do sentiment analysis, and it's very difficult to do. So it's a very hard problem to solve. Again, I don't want to dwell too much into it, but because you brought up, you're working with public health information on a global level, right? So you might probably be seeing how different it is from country to country, and how differently it is measured. So standardizing that and visualizing that at scale must be a very hard problem to work on.
Yeah, I think what this period has also bring to the surface, and I don't think they are good news, is that in order to be able to make data-driven decisions, it's not just about the technology that you need in order to do that, but it's really also about the quality of the data, and we have seen some countries struggling a bit with that, and that starts from how you collect, how you document, how you put the different pieces together, and then you start analyzing. So we've seen tremendous efforts by many institutions trying to make sense to all that data, but I think we've also realized that there's maybe a lot of improvements to be done from the data quality point of view in order to help make better decisions out of those.
Okay. So based on what you've seen in the past few months, what trends do you see coming forward, like in the next year or so? During, I would like to believe that would be the post-COVID period. I don't know how long this will go on for, but during the recovery process and the post-COVID, will you continue to see a rise in location data and the relevance of it? And will you see other new data sets growing and emerging from this pandemic?
Yeah, so I think this is definitely not over. So that's the relevance of, for example, human mobility will still be there for a long time. So there's an opportunity to all those providers to double down their efforts on building very strong products, and to contribute also to the debate to make sure that this is done in a proper way, that everybody, users, administrations, the companies, everybody can benefit from that. So I think that's an opportunity to tackle this debate now that there's a really important use case to solve. And then spending, I think also all those metrics, trying to understand how the retail sector, the real estate sector start to recover, and what happens if there's a second outbreak. So that's gonna be still there. I mean, more on a data industry perspective. I mean, not sure if in 1-2 years, but what we see is the appearance of three types of companies. So one, that's the traditional data company, coming more from the space of market research, marketing. They are there. Who's there, and I expect them to adapt to the new business model that platform companies like Carto can bring, and I think the combination of the data plus technology can be beneficial. We'll see also the appearance of many new data companies like Spatial AI that you mentioned, or all these human mobility companies that have business models that are more oriented to cloud, and technology more oriented to cloud. And I think there's going to be more of those appearing. And then another very interesting type of companies. So are those companies that are not data companies, but that they have some assets, data assets that they can monetize, and they are trying to monetize. And I think we are in very early stages of that, and we'll see more and more maturity for those type of companies when they start getting how to monetize their data in the marketplace.
You're making me think about something, because this is something I think we've noticed, Sahana, too, is that it feels like it's been a time of like a flowering of partnerships and more data sharing.
Yeah.
And I think the urgency of the moment creates the need for that, right? So if you were just to look at us, like, we've got a great data set, but it's in many ways, I like to call it like a foundational niche data set, in the sense that it's broad, it covers, the surface of the US and of the earth ultimately, but it's like one part of the stack, right? And then there's all these things that we don't track or follow that can match to it. And so suddenly we're both feeling the urge, and we're being called upon to be like, hey, here's this part of the stack, put other stuff on top of it. Whereas I feel like previously people were like more in their own lane, like, this is the business that I'm building, right? People come to me for this thing. And sometimes you partner, but not all the time. And now there's a feeling about like, what do we actually have spatially? What do we all have between us? Yeah. And then the platforms like Carto, where you can start to apply all these different layers together. And I'm seeing that not only like in the sense of people putting these data stacks together, but of businesses being much more eager to cooperate and find ways to work together, which I think is pretty cool. I mean, it feels like almost like not a consolidation per se, but like a healthy sharing and consolidation of putting together what we all have.
Yeah, definitely more. Go ahead. Sorry, Javier.
No, please.
No, to add to Jerry's point, when COVID outbreak happened, we knew instantly that location data was going to be relevant, that, we need to like work with people to help in whatever way we can. I think a lot of companies came together and said, this is a global pandemic. We have to all come together, start helping. But our initial first thought was parcel data is super valuable, but how is it directly related to COVID? So we were like trying to figure out for a week, what we can do, what we can't do here. We were trying to put feelers out there saying, hey, if you need the data, please let us know. We want to help with research. And then Javier, you're aware of this data consortium by SafeGraph, that came to us, and we were like, wow, okay, this is where we can help. And then with that consortium, what we saw was, like Jerry mentioned, the synergy of data providers all come together. And, piece by piece, we mapped all of our different data sets together that helped create the different the visualizations, the overall solutions, a lot of which that we see on Carto blog. I love to read that stuff, your latest visualization on the protests that are happening in US. It's not one data set that made it happen. It's a culmination of a bunch of data sets. And it's unfortunate that it took a pandemic to get here, but there's definitely more, a symbiotic relationship between data vendors today, because we know that we need multiple data sets to come up with valuable solutions.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been interesting to see, because we were working with you, with SafeGraph, with Special AI, with all these providers, and all of a sudden I saw everybody on the same Slack room due to this consortium. It was, but what Jerry said, this is the focus of my day to day. I think we saw this need clearly in the industry. I think the industry was a bit broken, so as a customer, you had to deal with the platform company to license their technology, and then you get something. Then you want this piece of data, then you need to go evaluate different vendors, decide what to do, negotiate with them, and then you get the data in a different system. So when you want to use data from 4 different providers and technology, then you have 5 different systems to try to put together. And this is why we're trying to help to change by building the data observatory as part of the Carto technology, and then all these relationships with data providers.
Do you think this trend will continue to grow? These data providers coming.
I hope. Yeah, no, I think so, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
I think there's a clear need, and we are in at the beginning. If you look a couple of years back, I don't know which was, I don't think there's still a reference, but probably there was not even a clear data marketplace out there. And you see Amazon Web Service with one, Google Cloud with one, Snowflake with one, and there's still a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah.
I feel like it will, at least for the short term, because the pie of like the business space is growing too. And I think that people are seeing that it doesn't hurt you to find these ways to partner and point to other people, because the whole space is getting larger. So at least to me, it feels like that trend is going to hold for a while. And I'll just say personally, and for our team, it feels very healthy. It's kind of like, oh, good. You know what I mean? It's like one of these things where it just feels like a better way to work, to not be thinking about yourself and just your customer, but who else in the space can I point people to? Who can I borrow the cup of sugar from? Who can I do a deal with? And have that be a big part of how you're thinking. Yeah.
Well, I think everybody will benefit for this, and then I think you see an ecosystem to flourish now. So it's not just atoms out there. So.
Yeah. A new kind of not open source exactly, but a new kind of an ecosystem where people can, work with each other and still build good data together. Okay.
Definitely. I mean, and let's not forget, open source, open data, and public data. I mean, that's always that should be there, and
that should be there.
And we want to support that too.
Absolutely, yeah. That's sort of our roots as well. Working with open data and public data. That's kind of got us started into the space as well.
Yep.
So I know that this has been a very busy time for Carto, but what's next? What can we expect next?
As for our technology, so so what you can expect. So there's gonna be a lot of work being put into the connectivity of our stack with other technologies. So we're working a lot on a project that we call a federated table, so we can interact better with other databases. We've done also quite some work initially right now with connectors to the Google Cloud Stack. So for example, you see we have a connector now with Google BigQuery that you basically can read data from there, bring it to Carto and start your work. Also, we're working now to also connect more with open source software, so with QGIS and also leveraging DevGL for visualization. So there's a lot of work being put there. Then from the data side as well, so a lot to be done. You will see a new data catalog, a new version of the data catalog being released hopefully very soon. But also the integration of the data observatory work with the rest of the Carto ecosystem. So now our new data observatory pretty much works well with Carto Frames. That is our Python package. But we are bringing it now. We're opening it up to, from in the point of view of an API, and also into the Carto dashboard when you log into your account. So you then can also explore the subscriptions to data that you have from that central place. So a lot of work going to be there too, and we will keep onboarding new providers as well, definitely. And then a lot of work on the visualization. So we're working with new technology, so to be able to render more larger amounts of data on the maps.
On the map, yeah, that sounds good. All right. Okay, just a quick word to all the attendees. Please start typing in your questions. We'd like to get them all answered before we wrap up for today. But Javier, you're currently based out of Spain, right? How are things? Are the numbers flattening, COVID numbers starting to flatten and decline, and things getting better, loosening restrictions?
So yeah, hopefully yes. So today we just got confirmed that I'm based in Madrid, so we moved to phase 2 of the confinement. That is called. Half of Spain is moving to phase 3 already, but the epicenter happened here, so I guess it's normal that we are lagging behind, which means that I will be able to enjoy outdoors a bit more so far. But yeah, I think numbers are looking way better. But let's stay a bit cautious for for a while
Yeah.
because it's been tough. It's been a tough period.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been sort of like that for us here as well. Different states have different levels of restrictions right now, but everyone has started to like loosen it up and are moving towards a more slightly, you know, lower restrictions, being able to freely go outside, and eventually like opening up restaurants and things like that. So we are in that phase. I think that's why data tracking during this phase is even more important to see whether when restrictions loosen, when people start moving and start exploring things like they were before, will we see a surge again? Will we see a spike again?
And I'll add on to that too. I mean, this is where I feel like the data is so critically important, because not to try to be a sociologist here, just to share like my mood and just the mood that I feel right now is people are ready for this to be over.
Yeah.
They're ready for it to be over. And with the weather changing and getting nicer, they're actually feeling like it's over, because, people have been out in the US for the last couple of weeks more than they had been. And we're not hearing anything yet about like, whoop, the infections are going up. And so I feel like the mood is all like, wow, what a weird year, but like, hopefully that's kind of done. But of course we know that it's not necessarily the case at all. And so the emotion might be moving away from what the data is saying. So, and frankly, even on the news right now, I feel like you are like seeing data less, like we've switched over to different topics, but the tracking that you're doing is so critical, because if you see signs in that data, even if the emotions are saying it's not a problem, you're able to call that alarm real quick, right? And that might even be more necessary if people are just, we're done with it, and we don't get to be done with it, right? Until it's done.
Yeah.
No, I mean, yes, I think after 3 months, you can expect people really wanted to start back with this new normal or whatever. I mean, started to go out more. But then I hope that there's been systems being built to keep tracking the data and being able to detect if something bad's happening, or if there's an uptake of the cases early. And way earlier than this last time, and then I think we've all learned a lesson. We've all learned a lesson. So,
yeah. I hope
but in the meantime, if we are allowed to start, I mean, with responsibility, but if we are allowed to go out to certain places, then I mean, let's try to enjoy this moment too.
Absolutely.
Even the most cautious of us who want to be really, really cautious, of doing the things that could spike again, even we are sort of like physically, mentally done and are ready to like move on. So we reach that tipping point. All right. So
I think the fact that it's summer is not helping.
I know that's true. And the only place I think like the Southern Hemisphere, they're moving into the colder months now. So, they can probably like stay at home a little bit more than we can. How much of your COVID-19 work aims to compare and contrast similar lead and lag measures between different countries? Have you mapped that or tracked that, Javier?
No, not particularly. I mean, we did at the very beginning a study trying to study looking into the effect of the lag in between the mobility patterns and the cases, but we did that for Italy. We didn't compare it. What we're doing right now, it's still work in progress, but we'll share with you guys. So we're looking into comparing different areas. We're looking, for example, different counties in the US. So looking at the cases, and then how the mobility changed against the baseline. So I mean, you've seen a lot of these. Looking in taking January, February, the average as a baseline, and then comparing what happened daily in March. So taking that the peak of the difference and see across different counties what correlates with that, or which variables can explain that difference. So if the maximum in one county went from 0 being the baseline to -40 versus -70 in different area, and we're correlating this against socioeconomic and sociodemographic and consumption, and then all the outbreak data to try to understand which variables explain that more. And now we want to look into the recovery. So looking at how fast those same countries are getting back to the zero, let's say back to the baseline, and see if the same attributes that explain the decline are also explaining the recovery. So this is an ongoing work that we're doing.
Wow, wonderful. That's a really good question. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, thank you. And you made me think. So, question. So, we talked about the ghost map and the cholera outbreak history earlier. Have you done any reading or looking at the 1918 pandemic? Is that something? Because this is as somebody who likes to read history and think about the future, I feel kind of bad for not looking even more closely. Like, I did read a book on the topic, and I was surprised by some of these parallels. Like, I had never seen people in the US wearing masks before, as an example. It just felt, for whatever reason, just like culturally that had never been done. And then I was looking at photos from 1919 of baseball players all wearing masks while they were playing baseball. And just the impacts that had on the economy, the sheltering in place, what happened when things reemerged, what political differences happened when things reemerged. There have to be a lot of echoes, and I'm curious if you've had the time yet to kind of look back at that.
No, I haven't. But during these past months, when looking at the news and the pictures of the Spanish flu in the 1918, and looking at the pictures right now, and you see like,
and that may not have been a fair name. Kind of got tagged with that.
I know the story, but yeah, I mean that's how it's known. That is, it was more because we were reporting it more often. But I was shocked to see the resemblances of the picture. I mean, the equipment obviously was different, but all those temporary hospitals being built, and you could see that happening right now too, and all the nurses and everybody with the masks and so on. For us here in Spain, it's also it wasn't natural, and still for me it still isn't, but may probably will become now.
Yeah, true. There are a lot of parallels between that time and now. There were, again, I feel like I should have read up a little bit more about it before bringing this up, but there were two cities that were, there was one city that stayed back and didn't celebrate, and there was one, I think it was Philly, was it? Or one of the two cities was Philly, if I remember correctly.
It was in Philly, I think. Philly had the big outbreak. I could be mistaken too, but I know the same story. I think St. Louis socially distanced, and Philly went forward with like big parades and things of that nature, and had a terrible outcome. They had the real spike.
Yeah. So history is repeating itself, I guess. Jim and everyone else live with us, please continue to ask these wonderful questions. Meanwhile, we can probably switch over from the somber discussions of COVID to maybe something fun. It's funny, everyone's been talking about watching a lot of TV, reading up a lot because you're stuck at home, but I don't think it's like that for everyone. I think at Carto, it's, your work has probably gotten busier, so I'm not sure how much time you've had in lockdown to like really enjoy, like put your feet up, read a book or watch some TV. But have you been watching or reading something interesting?
I mean, it's been in phases, but in 3 months you do have time to watch series and to read books. So yeah, I've seen stuff. I mean, I've seen like seasons and seasons of new stuff. So right now I'm with the Ozarks. That is, I didn't. It's new. I know that is not new, but it's new for me, and I like it. I like it a lot. But I've been through the Last Dance entirely, that I enjoy a lot.
I gotta say, I love that. I watched that too. That was one of those series where if they had actually just made like 20 more hours of content, and I just could have listened.
Watching.
Dip in, trash talk Horace Grant as a trader, or watch more of Dennis Rodman's antics and Phil Jackson's coaching. I would just keep watching it. I like that one. I thought that was good.
Yeah, and then we at home we also watch, and I probably was not the best choice to put a positive mood during the lockdown. But we also watched the Homemade Tale, you know.
Oh yeah.
The Homemade.
Yeah.
Pretty dark story.
It is a hard. Yeah, I have to say it is hard to watch.
Oh shoot! Oh man, that's a weird time to watch that one. Yeah, we watched.
Yeah.
Yeah. I watched the first season, and then it just got a little like it just
too much.
It was just like too heavy of a vibe, because it did a really good job of painting a situation that is so hard to ever imagine happening like again in an extreme way, but then creates like a very dark plausibility.
It is.
It's the backdrop of some current trends. Yeah,
I know. But it's a very good show, though. It's a very good show. I know that when the next season comes, even though it's hard to watch, I will continue watching it. So yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
And then for books, now that because I think it can be relevant to the discussion, the debate that we've been mentioning with the human mobility and so on. I read one book that I had there marked like to be read for a long time, and I didn't seem to have the time. Is the Kathy O'Neill book on she calls the weapons of mass destruction.
I read it.
You read it?
I'm just going to say that title is one of the best titles ever. So yeah, weapons of math destruction rather than mass destruction, because the title so clearly says the entire thesis in a way, which is like we use algorithms these days to make decisions about everything. When to buy and sell stocks, when to give somebody a loan, and then even when to put people into jail and how long their sentences should be. I mean, it's gone like wildly out of control because since it's scientific, it involves computers and math. There are a lot of people who just take it for granted that those algorithms are good. Like they must be doing something good for the world. They're better, they're more efficient. But since nobody really unpacks how they work, and there's definitely work growing in the space around social justice and equality and inclusion and even just human empathy in these algorithms, but we're not fully there yet. So that book really lays out all the ways in which when computers make decisions on behalf of society, you can bake in racism, you can break in bias, you can hold people back by being punitive to them and how you help them with loans or social services. So that was a really important work. Sorry, I didn't mean to diatribe, but I like that one. And a good title.
It's a very good title, yeah. Oh, nice. That's a really good collection of things that you're watching and reading, Javier. What about you, Jerry? What's the new thing that you've been watching and reading?
There's a book that I'm really excited about. It's been a while since I've been excited about a book that's coming out. So it comes out in 6 days. It's a book about modern monetary theory. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this kind of a movement or like a thought process. And the title of the book is called, it's called The Deficit Myth. And forgive me, I'm not going to be able to like eloquently talk through this, but the modern monetary theory is a notion of looking at the economy, which I feel like is very different than certainly of how like the American experience of how the economy works. And like government should be like very frugal and like only spend what they earn in taxes that people pay to the government. And it's basically this notion that all money comes from the government and the government is free to make as much money as it wants. It's free to actually create money and just give that directly to schools or hospitals or whatever bridges, whatever it thinks should exist. And the trick is that what taxes are actually burning money or removing money from the economy. So the government's job is really to put capital into the system. So if somebody's poor, you can actually like essentially just give them money. And what you're trying to do is you are managing against inflation. You can't have too many money points flying around or it doesn't make sense. But your job is to like capture where there's surplus and burn it and eliminate it from the system. And you can have essentially a world that's much improved because you're not waiting for businesses to pay you taxes before you do anything. And anybody who listened to what I just said will probably find flaws in how I like recapped it. It's almost like it's positing that you can have a capitalistic system that also has more social or like public benefit to it. And it tries to pull a little bit of this Galileo trick where like it's not the sun orbiting around the earth, it's like vice versa, like where money comes from and what you can actually do with it. So I'm interested to read that one. There's some good podcasts out with the author. I forget her name, but so I'm looking forward to this deficit myth book. And I haven't done that in a while. Like I'm looking at my Amazon. I'm like 6 more days, okay. Like so I'm curious about those things. It seems like that kind of thinking is going to be helpful to the global future in some way. I'm not an economist, you know. Sahana knows I liked Andrew Yang, who ran for president in the US. I like these ideas of like a universal basic income. I don't know what flavor of that works. It just feels like we can make life better by letting people have more agency in the economy. And it doesn't all have to come from like what currently gets compensated by employers with a profit motive. So
yeah,
not to be a hippie. That one's on now. That one's on.
No, but that's interesting. I would want to read that too, because Prashant and I sort of like discuss this a lot at home, and that's what they remain. A lot of times, a lot of these things become an ideology, but they're not fully like they can't be implemented at the grassroots level, like a lot of them. But I would be interested if there is a way that book explores an actual way of implementing it and executing it, because that's, you know, it's a very socialist way of looking at things. But I don't know how practical that would be, but I'd be interested to know that.
We'll see in 6 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about the book I'm reading. It's embarrassing. It's about toddler discipline, but I want to talk about this.
Toddler discipline. Yeah, don't be shy about it. I'm fascinated. As somebody who doesn't have kids, like how do you how do you do that? I was an unruly youth. Like what's the
Yeah, but I want our listeners to think that I'm interesting in life. Like I'm not a boring person reading about toddler discipline. But I do have a very interesting show that I watched recently. And it kind of opened my eyes because this was before my time. So it's called Mrs. America. It plays on FX. I watched it on Hulu. It's about Phyllis Schlafly, who became very famous and infamous for protesting against the ratification of ERA in the 70s and the 80s. And that show, Kate Blanchett plays Phyllis Schlafly, and that show sort of explores that whole glorious 70, 80 time with Gloria Steinem. I didn't even know Gloria Steinem was from Toledo, Ohio, not Toledo, Spain. But it was just, it opened my eyes to this world, you know, and I could draw parallels to what was happening in India. Again, this is before my time. I wasn't born yet, but it was just very interesting to see how there were these, at the same time, the cult popularity of two very opposing leaders, female leaders, like one for women liberation and equal rights, and one who thought, you know, that would just end the life of the American woman. It was just, it was a very nice watch. If you guys get a chance, I definitely recommend it. And this past week, I've been really watching a lot of live SpaceX videos. So
nice. Nice.
Yeah.
I watched the delayed launch, so that was the only part, the one that didn't launch. But
I know, yeah.
And I watched the real launch.
It was so fun, and I watched the docking and the guys entering this, the International Space Station and everything. It was just so much fun.
That reminds me. So my wife is watching Space Force, which came out on Netflix. Yeah, and that looks really funny, but I've not seen it. You know how it is sometimes with your significant other, like if you don't start a show at the same time, it's difficult to get them. Yeah, and it's very clear to me that this show is not for me to watch right now. It's like I'm like 5 shows behind, so it's like, what are you doing in the other room? Oh, okay.
Yeah, that happened with Money Heist, which is that Spanish show I was talking to you about, Javier, yesterday, about the heist that happens in the bank. Prashant started watching it before I did, and now I can't follow it. So until he's done, I can't watch it. So but I know that it's like
I haven't watched it, but I think it's very very addictive or something, because everybody gets into, then they can't stop. They can't stop watching.
Yeah, I know, it's become the biggest hit. Like everyone in India has been watching it, and I still have no clue what's happening. Except I know that they have these names, Tokyo and Berlin and things like that. So that's the only thing that I know. All right, so I think we've covered everything. It looks like we probably don't have any more questions. So I guess it's time to wrap up this super fun conversation that we had with you, Javier. Again, I know this is after 5 for you on a Friday evening. Europe time. So thank you again for taking the time for doing this with us. This was such a fun chat. We've been big followers of Carto and your work for so long, and for us to be able to partner with you last year and now to have this conversation, it's been a good evolution, and we totally cherish and love our partnership with you.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, it's been a pleasure, and thank you very much for inviting me.
Absolutely.
I'll talk to you soon. Enjoy your Friday on your new phase of being able to,
Starts on Monday. I'm still.
Oh, Monday. Oh, okay. All right. Don't then. Yeah.
I can go out at 8 p.m. At 8 p.m. So I still have 2 hours.
Okay.
I can go out.
You have 2 hours. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thank you for joining us. And I will make this into a YouTube video, share it with all of our attendees and our viewers. I'll share it with you as well, Javier. And again, this was fun. Thank you. Stay safe. Be well.
Same. Thank you. Thank you, everybody that joined.
Bye, Simon.
Bye.